So I will call the meeting to order and,
The second to start recording.
okay,
There we go.
we're all set?
Yep.
And, we were all here. All present and accounted for. Speaking of that, you did forward me something, but there was no attachment, so I didn't know if you intended to have an attachment on that letter.
Probably.
Okay.
I'll have to go back and look at it.
Okay. So I'll turn it over to you to
Yeah,
talk about.
since Amber's not here tonight and she'll do the minutes for us, if we could just do the roll call so
Sure.
that she knows that people are here.
David Martin. Dave Venter.
Julie McKenzie,
Kelly Tarbell.
Jamie Dickey, Renee Gambino.
Lauren Fearman
Craig Cutbeater.
and Deb Fishwick. Which Amber will be able to see when she sees the recording. Right, so we are not here to run a regular meeting. We're here to go through and do the information about the upcoming budget, which vote will be happening a week from today, between 10 and 7 at the regular polling places. The information about this is available on the website, and we will go through what we went through on April 2nd when this board voted to put that forward. So I will put that up on our screen here as well, which is hard to do from a distance. As I said, everything is available on the webpage. So we are putting forward a revised budget of $8,907,773. That is a 16.17 increase over the current year budget. And we focus on the increase in spending. However, under the new funding formula, we want to stress that this is a decrease in our base tax rate. While we are spending more, your base tax rate is being lowered as a result of the change in the funding formula that gives us credit for having more students than we were being given credit for previously.
Almost twice as many.
Almost twice as many. We had this year, 328 equalized students, and next year we will have 642. And that means that we get increased funding from the state, and we are therefore able to have spent more money, but have the tax rate decrease. So under the new funding formula, this takes the current base tax rate, which this year was at $1.43, 1.43. Next year it will be $1.32, 1.32. So, and this number as well of the $8,907,773 is a 2.95% decrease over the budget that went out in March. So it was a decrease of $226,747. And the changes made, the reductions, where we reduced the funding for 2 full-time building subs. We reduced the capital improvement money. There was a reduction in the assessment from the TRSU. As we look at the actual benefits for a number of people who are in some different positions, there's a reduction in their benefits and a decrease in benefit reduction for new hire, for Ludlow administration. And just to remind everybody, we've gone over this a couple of times, but under this new formula, the projected tax rate, which is in yellow on the screen down at the bottom right, for Ludlow will be 3.56%, not the 18% that I know people are hearing. Right? The state wants everybody to hear that your property taxes are going up by 18%. That may well be an average throughout the state, but that's not what's happening here. The property tax increase for Ludlow with our reduction in the base tax rate, it is 3.56, and for Mount Holly, 6.24. that is essentially what we have to share with you. We've gone over the ways in which this budget was put together a couple of times. Is there anything that Cheryl still is not, I'm still speaking for her.
So if maybe you're following legislation, the yield bill left Ways and Means today. The yield that was put out was 9,856. So it'll be slightly higher than what's projected in the center, which will take our tax rate down another bit. It's gonna go through every.
I start with the brick when I talk to you, I don't know why.
So as we change that, I'll change the percentage increase. CLA.
So we'll take ours down a little bit, is what you said, right? Yeah, okay.
As every year, not including, including this one, the change in that yield is happening repeatedly from the time we set our budget. And when we get to June, July, when it's finally finalized. Normally, those changes are very small, so that we're not constantly going through and telling everybody, it's going up, it's going down, it's going up, it's going down. We vote on it and we tell you what it is in January. If it is changed by March, it's going up only a little or something that is relatively small, and then we know what it is when we get to the summer. This year, it's been a roller coaster, and therefore we keep telling you when the changes come in place. That's not a new thing. There have always been adjustments to it as we go along. The wild swinging of it is new and caused by the specific items in this new funding formula that created a problem, and that the state then had to undo that problem. There'd been a 5% tax cap on it, which was being manipulated by some of the districts. The ones that were disadvantaged by the funding formula were using that to try to raise their spending and not have to pay more than 5%. So that was removed, and that brought the yield back where we wanted to be again.
Or can you repeat the 24-25 equalized pupil number, and then this year's 23-24?
So under the old formula, it was 328.29. We don't have 0.29 students, but that's what it works out to. And for next year, under the new funding formula, it will be 642.2. And that's where the money difference comes in. So for some districts, under the new equalized rating, their number of equalized students dropped rather than being raised. Because students who live in poverty and students who live in rural areas are weighted as costing more than students who are in more well-to-do families or live in more urban areas.
So is the number, that 556, is that what we had last, or that we have this year under the news?
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
And do you know why it changed so much from last year to this year? Or I'm sorry, from this year till next year?
Free reduced.
Yeah, so under this year's formula, when you convert that 328 to what it would have been if the new funding formula had been in place.
Right.
It wasn't in place. But if you converted it, it would have been 556. But there are some, when we went to free lunch for all of our students, we had a initial reduction in the number of people who filled out the forms required to be counted as receiving that aid or qualifying for free and reduced lunch, because they didn't have to fill the forms out anymore. But then the state went to a different way of certifying, which is a direct certification through families that make use of Medicaid, and that raised our numbers back up again. So we were looking at a lower number for this last year or so in terms of our students who live below the poverty line, even though we knew they're there, but if they didn't fill the forms out, we could count them. And now that we can do direct certification in other ways, those numbers have gone back up to what we believe is an accurate account, which is, I think, a little over 40%, is that?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a little bit confused. Which is not unusual.
Easily done.
Convoluted and challenging.
I'm first looking at the original budget on page 26. And down there, line 28, I guess just below line 28, is the projected tax rates for Ludlow-Mount Holly. 2024, we had 14378 for each town. And then 20, the original budget went up, I think, by 1 cent each on those. You just mentioned earlier about the reduction of 10 cents. But then I'm looking at over here on this sheet that we just received. You're showing a 3.56% increase, a 6.2% increase. Maybe I'm misreading that, but.
So there are two different things here. One
Okay.
is the projected base tax rate, which has to do with our local education budget.
Right.
And then these projected tax rates, those are when we take everything into account, the CLA. And so that is the prediction for what your actual property tax rate would wind up being with all of these other pieces. The projected base tax rate is just what comes from the local education budget. Which
We have control.
which is all we control.
Okay.
And if part of what made this perfect storm of confusion is that we have this ridiculous CLA number happening because property values have gone up over the last couple of years in Vermont and people haven't done the reappraisals. We don't control that. And we can't do anything about it. That is what is raising for most people. That's what's doing this enormous increase, not the base tax rate. And it's happening that increase in the taxes as a result of the CLA is happening, unfortunately, at the exact same time as the state put together this new funding formula designed to let you spend a little more money without raising the base tax rate, which then butts right into, but the taxes are going up because of the CLA. And we understand that people can't vote on whether the CLA is going to go up or not. It's going up. It's happening.
40 cents.
CLA, common level appraisal.
Okay, thank you.
I looked it up.
Yeah. Another challenging thing to explain.
But is it an
Yes.
inverse relationship, like when the percentage of the CLA goes down, that actually like,
Yes.
negatively impacts the?
Which is why it's difficult to talk about when I keep saying the CLA is going up. It's not really. The CLA is going down and therefore the cost as a result of the CLA is going up.
So if someone were to ask me, and I was trying to explain it, local school budget taxes are only going to go up by, well, now it's going to go down by 10 cents. However, what the state adds to the budget through their somewhat convoluted formulas
Understatement.
is taking it up to the
Yes. Yeah.
6.84. And that, the vote, well, the only thing the vote could do is just force you all to come, if they were to say, we don't want to do it, force you to come back more and try to cut it
Yeah.
down another 6.24% to account for what the state's doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Can I just add
Yeah.
tidbit? Was there a hand somewhere? I'm sorry.
No, I was, you go ahead.
Oh, my tidbit is when we talk about somewhere in that conversation, we said the word we have control over. But part of our dilemma is we have very little control over a small portion of the whole budget because we don't really have a lot of control over anything that we pay tuition for, which is all of our 7 through 12 kids at this point. We don't have control over special ed. We have limited control over salaries and benefits because those are all contracted at this point and negotiated through, a process. So when we go back to do cuts and make changes. We only have a very small piece of pie to make those changes to, and the rest of the pie has to stay exactly as it is, no matter what. And so it's hard for people to understand.
Brings up another question for me.
If, before we go into the next one,
Sure.
if I could just draw your attention to what you were talking about in terms of the CLA versus this base tax rate.
Right.
So Cheryl put together this calculation, and again, we've done this with the annual increase for $100,000 of house site value. Nobody's got a $100,000 house. It is put in there so you can do relatively easy math. The tax increase as a result of the CLA decline for Ludlow is $138.50 for every $100,000 of house site. And for Mount Holly, it is $178.50. However, because your education local budget base tax rate is a reduction, you're not going to pay $138.50 for every $100,000 of house you own. You're only going to pay $60 in Ludlow or $100 at Mount Holly. And this feels, I know, to people like, how can that be true? But that's how this intersection of the CLA with the local funding formula is working, is that taxes are going up because of things out of our control. Because of the things that are within our control, we're lowering the base tax rate. So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
but I wanted to
that's
make
great
sure
because
we
it
got that
just
out.
segues nicely into my next question.
Good.
You've cut the budget by 322,000, I think was the figure. Something in that.
226,747.
Oh, I'm sorry, what is the budget cut?
From March 5th,
Right.
we have reduced it by 226,747.
Which will we get our 10 cent decrease.
Yeah.
What impact does that have on the educational experience? I mean, since you have so little
sure.
control over it.
So that's a great question. If you look at the things that we cut, we had money in the budget to have a full-time building substitute in both of our elementary school buildings, which is something that we always struggle for subs. Frequently, it is easier to get somebody to agree to come every day, knowing that they're going to get work every day and get benefits. That has worked in a couple of our schools. It didn't work here in Ludlow or in Mount Holly. So we've had people come in and not stay with it. So we're funding it in our budget, but we haven't been able to actually make it work. Much as I would love to leave that in, which we did in the original budget, hoping that maybe we would find someone to take it when the budget fails and we need to remove some things. That's a thing to remove that is not going to immediately make a change in what's happening in the classroom. We reduced the money that is in our capital improvement fund, which means that if we have unexpected
Well, don't we have to replace the furnace?
We do, and we have money in the budget for doing that. But we had a bumper. We had we had some additional funding that we were putting in place on March 5th in case the bond passed, so that we would have enough interest to pay for it. And we'd had a very general estimate, thank you, a long day, a general estimate for how much it would cost to do the boilers, and we went and we got something more specific that allowed us to reduce that number. We don't, when you have less in the reserve, capital reserve, you run the risk of things happening, but we are also not at a place where if we want to make reductions and not have it directly affect the classroom, that's the place to do it. So we did that. Part of the budget for both of our school districts is the assessment from the TRSU. And the assessment from the TRSU is your special education, central office staff, and transportation. After the budgets failed, we went through the TRSU budget and were able to reduce that by a total of about $150,000. And that means a roughly $75,000 reduction to the assessment that comes to Ludlow-Mount Holly. And then these benefit adjustments are, once we put things into a budget based on a general estimate of who we think will be taking benefits in positions, especially positions that we are going to be filling. And between January, when we did our initial budget, and now, we know who some of those people are, and we know exactly what their benefits will be, and we're able to put those reductions in place.
What is the estimate for the boiler?
Oh, goodness.
Can I just, while you're thinking, because Amber's gonna be taking minutes when we're asking questions, if we don't mind just saying your name. I mean, I know most of us know each other, but she
Thank
can
you,
go
I
back.
appreciate it. Yeah. Approximately 350,000.
And I just wanted to add,
350,000
yeah, about
for the
350.
boiler. Is that also for the new tank?
It's
Yeah,
for the
that
whole
includes
fixing
taking the tank that's long overdue out of the ground and
Okay,
disposing
so
of
it
it.
includes the whole heating system.
Well, just the furnace and the tank. But it is kind of apropos that just last week, no, 2 weeks ago, a neighboring district to the west of us didn't pass their budget and their oil tank leaked. And now it's a massive problem. I won't be in the district, but it's all over the news.
Is there any money, this is Mary Ellen Ringolo.
Thank you.
Is there any money in the budget for capital improvements in Ludlow and LES at this point?
Specific to.
I mean, there's more money than the 350,000, not a lot, but there isn't anything that was put in specifically for, we know we're gonna need to do that. So we have things here that we know we're gonna need to do, but not necessarily have to do this year. And it would be much better for us to put in enough money to fix the roof. However, we are not being told that that is something that will definitely have to happen next year, that we can probably make it through until the following year. Not how we'd like to do things. However, we put all of that in place, didn't pass, now we have to make. Have to run some risks. And that's where we are, and just that if we have to make additional cuts, because we propose some additional cuts, those are people. And I understand that everybody, that we would all like, I join everyone in this. I would like to continue to have all of the things we have in Ludlow-Mount Holly and pay less for them. And it's just not a reality. If we're going to spend less, we're going to get less.
I mean, two points on Francis Devine.
Thank you.
Oh, I just remembered my name. Two things that come to mind, and one is, I've always thought of deferred maintenance as very expensive borrowing.
Yep.
Absolutely, you know, it just, yeah.
Yep.
The other thing is, I just wonder with the cut in benefits, how, I mean, in a time when it's hard to find teachers, how much more difficult, teachers and or administrators, how much more difficult does it make to hire people?
So we're not cutting benefits. The adjustment is somebody, so when we know we have a new position,
Right.
that somebody's leaving. So we put in our estimate that they are going to take a single plan, or they're going to take a family plan. And then we hire the person and they say, no, I'm going to be covered under my spouse's insurance. So that we are able to cut the line item so that we're accurately reflecting what the benefit cost will be. We have not cut benefits, and even if we wanted to, which we don't, we couldn't. That is another thing that we don't control. The state sets the benefits for our teachers, and that is done through negotiation at the state level with the unions. And no, we wouldn't. Yeah. For what you just said. We would like for people to want to. Good questions.
Are there people online that I just can't see?
I'm going to stop sharing for a moment.
Okay.
So that we can have anybody who might like to ask a question and isn't sure how to raise their little yellow hand.
Anybody else in the room?
Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one last question. Someone says to me, okay, now they've cut the budget, but it's still going up, you know, this whole CLA thing.
Yeah.
What's a simple way to explain why people should vote? I mean, I've actually tried to understand the CLA. I went into it, and my head was spinning after a little while. So if I'm in favor of the existing budget or the budget you're presenting here, and someone says, why are you in favor of it? Should I tell them?
I have a thought, and I don't know if it's a good thought, but it is a thought. To me, it's like going to Canada and trading in my money, and so it's not exactly equal, but I'm spending a different amount because I'm using different money systems. So here, the CLA, our house is undervalued because of inflated property values at the moment, right? My house used to be, say, 200,000, but now when I look on Zillow, it's, 300,000. And the state hasn't caught up to that 300,000, but they'd like to charge me that 300,000, so they're going to charge me a different rate because they know it's really worth more, and they have to make up that difference somehow. So they do it through the common level of appraisal system, which is another estimate of all sorts of things.
That's a great idea.
Right.
That's a really good.
I think also an important point is that, Mary Ellen Ringlow.
Thank you.
I think also an important point is that income sensitivity on tax rates is not impacted by CLA. And so I don't know, I guess it is in some ways, but your income isn't adjusted for where you live by a cost of living adjustment or anything. So folks who are protected by the cost of living or by the income sensitivity, they remain protected by that. And so their impact by this isn't as much.
Homestead tax credit is.
The homestead tax credit, yeah, the IN 111 or whatever.
That's a really.
So that, that's something important to keep in mind. And when, people just throw around numbers, it does get difficult to kind of parse out where it all will land for everyone individually, I think. But I think that's important to keep in mind. I think it's also important to keep in mind that we're talking about kids, right? And my children go to this school, and so obviously I have a conflict of interest, but we're educating our students here in Ludlow and Mount Holly, and we want to see them provided the best opportunity we can. And yes, it costs money, but everything costs so much money lately. So it's it's that all ships rise with the high tide or whatever, including the cost of education. And so if we're committed to our town and we're committed to the people who live here, we have to be committed to our youngest residents, and we have to support them through a great education. These schools are excellent. Mount Holly and Ludlow Elementary schools are really great schools. I've worked in education for 20 years myself, actually. And, the schools are really great, but they are up against, and finally we're seeing this adjustment here for equalized pupils being counted in a different way, because the educators that work in these buildings are up against some really challenging situations. We have a lot of high needs, not just, special needs, but a lot of students that are coming in, with a lot of needs. I mean, it takes more staff to support, a classroom of 10 students when there are a lot of various needs in that class, versus a class of 20 kids in another, area. So, I mean, I guess I would just make the case that, yes, it's more money, but hopefully income sensitivity, the IN 111 or whatever will help you out a little bit if it's, if it is a burden to you. And we just have to pay more for this like we pay more for milk and gas.
lower income households are protected and continuing credit. I think when somebody asking you why you should vote for this budget, my response would be twofold. One is the property tax increase that you are seeing is largely a result of something that has nothing to do with your local education tax. Your local education tax is in fact lowering your tax rate. And the second thing is, this is what it costs to run the school you want to have. And just as Marielle said, we would like it to cost less. I'd like my groceries to cost less, but I still want to buy eggs in them.
I'll also respond. I'm an old-time retiree.
I get it.
And, a certain degree of fixed income, so you don't want to see things go up. However, living out in Mount Holly, we don't have a lot of young people. And we need young people out there. That's one thing. The other thing is a good school, and both of these schools have great ratings, and we're very proud to talk to people about that. And that helps land values and real estate values. People are attracted to the town. Now, that's kind of
Then it comes in ways, when it's
it's kind of a whammy there, but that's kind of our respect, my wife and I.
Yeah.
And how we support these schools.
Okay.
Greg?
And our cost per pupil is just under $13,000. What's, remind us of the average in Vermont?
262 or something like that.
Oh, okay, but we're much lower than we were even a year ago. So we're right in line with the state average.
The state average is about 13,200 and change. We're at 12,900. So we are slightly below the state average.
The other thing, Frau, with state scores, the schools, for math, the state average is 35%. Now Holly, while it's not acceptable rate, we want to get it higher, it's 55. We're doing better than the state average. Same way as with reading. State average is 50%, Mount Holly is 60%. So we have a pretty good school. I'd like to try to keep it that way.
Well, we have things in place that are seen those numbers coming from our continuing improvement plan. We've put things in place in the last 2 years, year and a half, really, that are improving those scores.
Right.
So we've got changes in some personnel and changes in our curriculum that are already having results. So we do not want to wind up having to make big changes to what we're doing, because that's how you that's how you destroy those improvements.
And a really large majority of that new curricula was piloted in Mount Holly and now is adopted TRSU.
Are there any Zoom questions? I just can't see.
Let's see them.
Yeah.
I have a question as far as, I went on the website, June Catering. I went on the website and got the budget, but it's different than what you've given me here. And it was dated March 28th.
Yeah, so.
So how do I get to the?
So if you go to, I will show you, I will try to show you. Let me.
No. This is the same thing that was just handed to us.
Right.
I know, but the actual, this is the same thing as this up here. It's just in bigger font, so I didn't read it on.
This was a comparison between the original and the revised that we looked at. And this is only the changes, because we were trying to find what actually changed. But our total was at, down at 8.768. But Jersey right now is 8.9. So we had come up with that, there was a reduction of 366,000.
So there's one budget that came out of 2013. Next one came out of 2014.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So if you go to the Two Rivers site and you scroll down, we get to the Ludlow-Mount Holly proposed budget. And that should bring you to this. And the current things are the things that are not in a folder. So right? So our current budget is one that is labeled revised LMH FY 25 proposed budget from 4-2. Because we came forward in that March meeting with a proposal that included these additional personnel cuts. And then the board voted to put those back into the budget. So there were some documents from that. We put this forwards as a proposal. The board looked at it and they make it their budget, which said we're going to put these people back in. An excellent choice to do that. But then that means that there's a document that shows that in between March 5th and April 2nd. So if you go as I walked you through here, you will be able to find all of that. And if you look at it and you're seeing something that doesn't match up, give us calls and we'll go through it.
And even though those positions were reinstated into the budget, there still was 226,000 cut since the March 5th vote, which is why the overall increase is lower than it was.
Any other questions in the room? Any Zoom questions?
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Can you just remind us all the vote is on?
The vote is a week from today on Tuesday, April 23rd. Voting hours at both of the polling places in Mount Holly and in Ludlow are from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Normal polling places?
Normal polling places, which I believe is the Ludlow Town Hall and the Mount Holly Town Office.
Right.
Right, so we would encourage everybody to turn out and vote, and would encourage people who've come to this meeting to remind everybody that that's when it is happening. We try to get that information and word out to as many places as possible, but people don't usually think April 23rd is when I go to the polls. So we're reminding everybody of that.
Maria?
Thank you. If we have our signs from the last vote, if we can put them back up.
Can
Not the ones that
Can I just say one thing about signs? If you put them on public property, at least in Ludlow, they will be taken down. They have to be on private property because the town has some ordinance-y type thing.
Of course, they should
Okay.
be, you have to ask people to park.
So
Just put it on.
You can't put it in the median by the light.
That's the state, that's different, I don't know about that. But like in the green by the gazebo, you can't put signs, they will be taken down.
And not the signs that say to vote on the bond.
Yeah, no, don't put those.
Make sure everybody knows. Who stands on my signs.
But remember to vote and vote for the school budget. Yeah, you can put those up on anybody's individual property.
That's actually a good thing for us to close with, to be really clear. The bond is not included in any of this at all.
Budget.
This is just the budget. There's no bond.
Early and many times.
It's really not. If anybody thinks of other questions though, or you are talking to people who are thinking of questions, please come and ask us.
Lauren, my memory is that the River Valley budget also failed on the 5th.
The River Valley Tech Center,
Yes.
their budget passed.
Oh, it did?
It did.
Oh, it's cumulative. Okay. Got it.
All right. Thank you.
We're
Thank
good?
you.
All right, I'm going to say goodbye to people on Zoom.
Thank you.